It's the show called Bring It In. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is Troops Bring It In. We're joined today, very pleased to have Wizards GM Tom Sheppard here. How are you, Tommy?
Fellas, I'm doing fantastic. It is an honor to do this show, but I'm embarrassed for you. You guys have so many fantastic guests. This kind of tells me this must have been the Tuesday cancel day, and you stuck me in here, but I really am grateful. It's awesome to be here.
Tommy, you're a celebrity, and we love having you here. But you're right. I did text you kind of late last night.
Hey, no offense taken.
How's everything going?
But I look at, you have Daniel Coyne on your, it's like your list of guests, and my name's going to be one of these things that's not like the other. You know, that's from Sesame Street, but I'll pick it out. Maybe nobody else will notice, but you guys have some amazing guests on your show.
No, that's very kind of you to say. Can you hear me okay? I feel like my internet's screwing everything up. Is this working?
You're doing fantastic from this end.
Maybe you can't hear me.
Yeah, your audio is good. The video is slow.
So, okay, well, you don't need to see me. That's fine. Let me do some biography points here for you, Tommy. You are in your 27th year of being in the NBA. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You're GM of the Wizards, 16 years with the Wizards. Before that, you were 9 years with the Nuggets. You've been involved in the Olympic movement since '96. You do something that we can discuss with the Lithuanian national team and Šarūnas Marčiulionis. You're an adjunct professor at Georgetown. And most importantly, you have 150 children. Is that right?
Some days it feels that way, but 7 for sure.
7. Which makes you almost, I think the most kids we've had of any on the show is Chad Ford with 8. So you're close.
Chad and I were talking about going in on an HMO together. So it's a good reminder. I got to give him a call.
That's a good idea. So can you talk to us quickly about the Sheppard family collection of pets?
Well, we live a little bit outside of Annapolis, and we're very fortunate. We have about 10 acres that we lease. We have 5 horses out there, 3 goats that run through, and a donkey. And then down below at our house, we have now 13 ducks, and we have 4 barn cats and 2 dogs. And it's quite the menagerie, I'll put it that way.
Can you tell us the story?
And actually, we're raising one of my daughters.
What happened? You bought
a puppy.
Oh, wow.
What's that?
What was the story of, like, you got special dogs to protect the chickens? Is that what? Tell me about that.
Yep. So originally, my wife wanted to raise chickens, and so we started out with that, and then obviously the foxes find out right away, hey, there's chickens here, so they wiped out our first chicken herd. So my wife got online and found that there's these dogs, Anatolians, that are livestock dogs. They guard it. They're particularly good with chickens and ducks. So she got these dogs to protect our ducks and chickens, and the only thing we feed them is raw chicken. So the big question is, if those dogs ever had access and they understood who they were guarding, they'd probably just wipe the herd out themselves. But so far, so good. We're very, very fortunate. But we prefer the ducks to chickens now. We're full-time duck people. Great eggs, and they don't make as much of a mess. They don't crap all over your yard.
David, I'm going to ask you to take over for just a couple of minutes while I try to fix my technical issues, okay? Let's see. I'll be right back.
I'm happy to do so. I will see you back in a second, Henry. So, Tommy, first and foremost, your family's okay, and everyone in the Wizards organization is doing okay?
I promise you, we're making the best of a bad situation. Thank you. Everybody's happy. We're healthy. Been laying low. I've been so grateful to our Wizards staff and our players. Everybody has made the commitment to stay connected. I think what we've tried to do is just be where our feet are. We don't worry about dates on a calendar or any rumors that are out there, when or what's going to happen with the season. Just say, hey, as you told me years ago, Coach, it's always better to stay ready than to get ready. And trying to get guys back in shape is going to be very, very difficult as it is for basketball shape. But if you can get them every day, we have Zoom workouts that are cardio, we have strength workouts, and really been amazing, the participation. The ball handling drills have been fantastic. We got some big blooper reels, but I think the most important thing for us is staying ready. When that day does come, you don't want to have to try to get yourself cardiovascular-wise back into shape. But as you know, basketball shape, there's only one way to get into it. So I'm hopeful when the doors do open and we can get going again, a good 3-4 weeks is important to get everybody out there.
Well, so I've talked to a lot of people in the NBA who talk about these Zoom workouts, but I've never asked a particular question. I'm going to ask you, my friend, what do these look like? Are the players watching the camera and then they're doing the ball handling so your coaches can see it? How is that going? I'm curious.
Well, we've it's been a work in progress, but absolutely. So the players have a view. Most guys will use an iPad. Some guys use their phone, but they're working off the verbal cues. Right. They leave their camera on, but they're not trying to look at themselves. They see the coach. So most guys have the view where it's just like, I'm just staring at you right now. That's what they'll see. And then they can go out and replicate whatever's in front of them. And it's not super, obviously it's not a high definition broadcast or anything, but really the most important thing is they're able to replicate the moves that are being called out. I think from a conditioning standpoint, we've had some fitness tests and guys are in pretty good shape, actually. These are NBA athletes. They're some of the best athletes on the planet. But what I think the one thing that we all agree on, Coach, I know you do, is players need a target. They have to have something that says, okay, this is when I have to be ready by. So if we put in these Zoom workouts and we kind of post the results and we kind of put guys up against each other, they know, hey, on Wednesday I better be with it because Ish Smith is dominating the ball handling drills, or Isak Bonga has had 100% attendance, or so it's been great. And then when Bradley and John will jump in, those guys bring up the level every single time. Anytime they're popping in on the workouts, all of a sudden everybody's grunting and groaning and sweating left and right. So it's been fun. I think it's a community. We're all we're herd animals, man. We all want to belong to a community, and the Wizards are proud to be together through this.
I love that. All right, Henry,
I think I'm back.
Can
you guys hear me okay? I think
I'm solved.
Henry, welcome back.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. Bring it in. Tommy, you you must know a lot about Arturas
Karnisovas, actually, but he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Arturas is going to do great things for Chicago. He's a very special person in Lithuanian basketball lore. One of the youngest players ever to play on their national team, was on the original team in '92. Played with a broken foot. All the vets made him play. He's got amazing grit. He is a guy that will absolutely do whatever it takes to get it done. He's good people. Hell of a basketball player.
How did you first meet him?
I met Arturas through Sharunas Marciulionis, who's like a brother to me. Sharunas finished his career in Denver, a very short 17 games, but because he was injured the entire season that we had him, Sharunas and I became very friendly, very close. And we put together what was called the Northern European Basketball League. I helped him with some stuff as he put that together. When it originally opened, we had, I think it was 36 teams in 18 countries, one of which was the London Towers, coached by one Nick Nurse. Take you on a history lesson there. But we had an amazing time. We had the first year of EuroLeague when it was Zalgiris won that. They were a member of the Northern European Basketball League. Arturas, like I said, he's everybody's little brother to the old Lithuanians, the Sabonises, the Marciulionises of the world. Arturas was like everyone's little brother. So I got to meet him. Gosh, it was probably 1996, 97. And we've been buddies ever since. He's wonderful people, got a great family. I've spent time at his house in Lithuania with his parents, and great meals, great people. And again, you got to understand, Henry, there are more Lithuanians in Chicago than there are in Lithuania. So Arturas he's right at home in Chicago. It's like the capital of Lithuania.
Wait, is that true?
No, absolutely. Very strong community there. I helped set up a game years ago when the Bulls were playing the Pacers, right? And that's when Jasikevičius was with the Pacers, and they actually sold out. They sold the club level out to Lithuanians, and they sold out a beer before halftime, which they still think is a record. So they're very fond of Lithuanians in Chicago. They're fun-loving people.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Are you
will
prepping
be
for the
going,
draft now?
I mean,
How are you doing
if
that?
The league in Europe,
Go ahead, Dave.
yeah, no, Henry was just asking the same I was going to ask is how can you kind of evaluate draft prospects in Europe? And if they open the leagues back up, which I know Israel just announced they're going to start doing in June, will you try to get over to catch some games or send someone from your staff, or will you have local people there covering it?
We have local scouts that can handle pretty much any of the load in Europe. But this has been a culmination the entire season. We've canvassed the globe. We had people at every game in the NBL that involved ball in Hampton. We have scouts that are pan-European. So we feel like the work is done. You can only add to it at this point if the games come back. You can imagine the quality of those games might be a little bit less than aesthetically pleasing at first. But, most of the draft picks that have entered their name, international draft picks that put their name in, we have a pretty good document on them. And we've had very good success preparing for this draft, probably better than we've ever done in the past, honestly, because usually in March and April, as you know, you're always flying to places, you're going to workouts, a lot of travel that doesn't involve film work. And I think if you do a great job on your film work, you did a great job on the scouting reports all year long, the work really is there for you already done. And our biggest job is don't screw it up, as you like to say. Don't overthink it. Let's look at what we've done all year. Our opinion shouldn't change because of one workout. But one thing we do miss about when we get all our players together and you work guys out, you miss that grit test. You like to see their eyes. You like to see how they respond to adversity in a workout. And that's something we always control in our environment. We don't have that right now, but that's okay. We'll make do.
Is there a chance it could work better than the normal system?
I think so. I think there's a lot that coming out of this when we pivot, the world opens up again. I think telecommuting is going to be more common, and the ability to meet like we are now, you kind of kick yourself and ask, why weren't we doing this all along? Why weren't we having weekly Zoom calls and putting people, we break down the draft, 5 players every call, and we have video attached to it, and every scout has to present on certain players. And then, as you know, you got to open up the microphone, let everybody tear into a player or let everybody support or kind of go against why they think this player should be a Wizard. Very healthy debates. And I think that's what's a good sign of a great scouting group is when you can have healthy debates on players. And usually we do that. We bring in scouts in June, and there's a ramp up as you're getting ready for the draft. But, we're further along right now in April, May, than sometimes we are going into June. So I feel great about that, where we're at. I can't say enough about the work our scouts have put in.
I know that there's this research that like job interviews can that people, if you do a job interview, then it puts the focus too much on how they perform in the interview and not enough on their track record. I presume the same thing could be true in basketball, where the workout would overwhelm your brain a little bit.
Yeah, I think what we try to do is make it as comfortable as possible. These are job interviews, but certainly we don't want to have the same canned questions and canned answers coming back and forth. Players are very astute, and they've been trained very well media-wise. And so we don't try to treat it like a media interview. We don't try to treat it like a job interview. It's just simply, how do we get to know you better? What way do you respond to coaching, which I think that's something Coach Thorpe always taught was, hey, this player, it's your job as a coach to figure out how to get the best out of him. And you can't discount a player because he doesn't respond to the way that you go. You've got to adjust to them to get the most out of them. And I think one of the things that I always take with me is, tell me what the guy can do. We can figure out pretty quickly what they can't do. But there's value in every player if you look hard enough. And it's so hard to play in the NBA, Henry. The only thing harder is to stay in the NBA. But, every report can't say, well, this guy can't play. or this guy stinks, or, you know, you've got to find the good in these players. And I think that's something that we've taken a great deal of time in the last year since I've become the GM, is to really dive in deeper on players and figure out what benefits we could have. And adding the go-go to us gives us a lot more opportunities to put players we're interested in, but they're not ready for the NBA. Now we have a place to grow them without them really hitting our cap.
Do you think it'll happen? Do you think there'll be a G League season?
You know what? I can't read the tea leaves right now, but we're really just focused on the NBA. But I think down the road, obviously the G League has shown its value. And next season, with all the excitement building, we have now kids coming in that are not going to college, they're coming straight to the G League. I think that's going to add a huge excitement to the G League. And that's been the best incubator, the best R&D for the Wizards. In the 2 years we've had a team, we've really burned up the brakes going back and forth between our locker room and the go-go locker room. Can't say enough about the ability to have that in your own building. So players are being observed by all of our coaches, where you know, you can wake up in the morning, practice with the Wizards, play for the go-go that night. We actually had a situation this year where we had Admiral Schofield play 2 games in a day. He played for the go-go in the afternoon and the Wizards at night. That stuff is so important to us, to see players get minutes, especially young players. And like I said, we grabbed a couple players that went from being maybe Exhibit 10 kind of guys to, we made them two-way players to roster players all in a year. So it's been a great opportunity. I think, Coach Thorpe, you would love the G League. Watch you guys grow.
Yes, Coach. Tommy, I want to ask you. I think I watched the G League this year for the first time pretty closely, and I watched a ton of European games as always. I feel like the G League is an incredibly talented league with guys that just don't know how to play yet. But in terms of the European guys, especially the veterans of those leagues, are extremely experienced and really know how to play. These guys are incredibly talented, skilled, and just don't know how to fit in yet, which is why you'll see guys jump from Exhibit 10 to making it in your league, because they've kind of figured some stuff out. But do you see the G League as that kind of talent, especially going forward as guys get more and more experience?
I think so, and I think it all starts with the quality of coaches that are available. You know, you look who won the title last year in the NBA, and he was a G League coach. And you look at the great job Memphis did this year, where their head coach was a G League coach. And there's several players that are in the NBA that are thriving, that started out as G League guys. And I think there's several coaches. It's a great incubator for all levels, all staff, everybody it's a great place to get a lot of responsibility early and kind of find your way. In the NBA, it's frustrating. A lot of times the head coach is the only voice that they'll hear in practice. So where else can young coaches get a chance? So we like to rotate. Last year, Jarrell Christian was our head coach for the Go-Go, did a fantastic job, but we promoted him. He's an assistant coach now for the Wizards. We took Ryan Richmond, who was our third assistant last year, put him as the head coach of the Go-Go this year. We like to rotate those people through so they all get head coach on your resume. Is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for us to evaluate your coaching ability for the future. Player development is 100% our focus.
Yeah. Go ahead, Henry.
Sorry, we have some questions are percolating already. If anybody has a question, click the little chat button, pop it in there.
Hey, is there one for my kid looking for the iPad? Tell her I got it. I've got the door locked, and I keep hearing somebody tapping, and I just ignore it.
We've had a few of those. I really enjoy the part when like the family joins the bring it in thing. It's part of what it's right there in the name. Like that's what we want. Okay, so we've had a very interesting question from Bilal is, are there any skills that you feel are more teachable and could allow you to potentially get a gem in the draft?
I think if you have an excellent shooting coach, you can take some people and tweak their mechanics and instill them with the confidence to take certain shots so you can make this shot. I think that's an unbelievable skill that you can build up. And I think there are some players watching this year's draft. What happens is you get fast-tracked, especially if you're an elite player in the United States. You're playing major minutes in the EYBL. You go to college, you don't play major minutes. You're done, one and done. So the vast majority of their minutes over the last formative years have been in EYBL grassroots basketball, which is it's an excellent opportunity. But you like to think sometimes that college would be a great place to learn fundamentals and promote you up to the NBA. Well, that's not available anymore. I think shooting sometimes, if you're an unbelievable athlete growing up, your shooting almost becomes secondary because your ability to get to the rim so often is so much easier than making open shots, and especially from deep. So if you have good shooting coaches, we've invested in some technology that's really helped us clean that area up. We have excellent development coaches that we see such a dramatic difference. And then really, if you have great shooters on your team, you get them in competitive situations. You see the young players jump in those shooting games. Hopefully they're not for money because those guys will get fleeced. But if they can get in enough shooting games, they start to get in a rhythm. We saw a lot of improvement from Jordan McRae because he was shooting every day with Bradley Beal and Davis Bertans. So who wouldn't want that situation?
What's this technology you're talking about? The shooting technology?
The Noah's shooting technology has been a great addition for us. It's facial recognition. They could go in and they evaluate every single shot, and I think it just adds to a coach's responsibility. It doesn't take away from. You don't want to see the Noah machine or the gun. You always joke about those shooting apparatuses that they take over, and all of a sudden they're going to want coach's pension too or something. But what we really want to do is get the technology that gives players immediate feedback of here's the shots you took today. Here's exactly where we think you need to improve on, and the feedback, the heat charts. I think those are positive reinforcement things with players, and challenging guys every day is so important. I don't think we get very far if you're just kind of fluffing guys up and telling them, hey, you're doing fine, you're doing fine. If they can't see the results, you've got to show them the way. Confidence is so big part of this business.
Henry, I want to say something to Tommy about that line of confidence. I just read about it. The great golf instructor Harvey Penick, who has kind of inspired me to write my book and everything. He has this great line where he says, "Go to dinner with good putters." That's so good. Go to dinner with good putters. There's just a confidence, right, an ease about their life because they're going to make those putts. And I just love that because confidence is such a big part of it. Even before social media, guys, most of these guys are such perfectionists, as you know. They don't like missing. They don't handle missing great. The ones that do are better off because they tend not to miss much to begin with. They don't get stressed.
Back when I was in Denver, I was blessed to have a couple of seasons with Dale Ellis and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And they would have shooting games where it didn't count if the net moved. And there was – yeah, it was an incredible thing to witness. And I tell that story just because when you learn what great shooters do and how they have to work every day at their craft, it helps you certainly as you move forward to compare great shooters. Because some reports, hey, you get a report from a scout that says, hey, this guy's a great shooter. Well, was he the best shooter on the floor that night? Sometimes that's not a huge compliment. It may be more of an indictment on everybody else. But if you get around great shooters long enough, you start to pick up a lot of the cues and really you spot the rotation so quickly now on and what can be fixed, what can't. Some guys are great shooters, and just thing never happens to go in, and we noticed that too. We got some good mechanics, but I think there's always that lack in the confidence. Trying to figure out how we can adjust that for those players. But at the end of the day, if they don't go in long enough, you won't be in the league very long.
Right. This is a question for both of you. Having watched players, like I remember when JJ Redick was not playing in Orlando, and in warmups he went around 5 shots from each spot from 3. I think missed 1 shot, which is 90+% unguarded from 3, which translates to something in play, right? Like, what's the discount? So maybe half of that end up being his game rate of makes. If you're watching someone alone in the gym, what do you expect them to play in a game compared to that percentage? If that makes sense.
Well, for me, if they're the realistic game shots that they're taking, and I wouldn't put a number on it as much as make sure they get at least 12 shots, because about 6 or 7 of them will go in, I guess is the answer. Because great shooters, they're going to find a way. This year, we took somebody to the extreme with Davis Bertans. Watching him as his shot selection at the beginning of the year, if you're not used to it, it's kind of it opens your eyes real quick because you say, well, I think his foot's at half court. I'm not sure. Is that a good shot? If you watch the games with the sound down, you think every time he's shooting, it's the end of the quarter because he'll pull up from anywhere.
Yeah.
But they go in. and they put so much stress on the defense that it opens the floor up. And when you watch him and Bradley, the way they were able to play together this year, shooting is a very powerful, very, very stressful situation for the defense if you have great shooters out there. It's been amazing to me to see what is considered a good shot now compared to 5-6 years ago even. And John Wall's he's testified to this because he's basically been out for 2 years. And he's watching and he said, man, the game is totally different than when I left. Because they're just, I predict, I know Daryl Morey has said this, and I'm echoing him, teams will shoot 53s a game in the near future. It's just, it's if you get enough good shooters out there, it's a good shot. If they can make it, it's a good shot. And it certainly opens up for everybody else.
Yeah, I showed a video the other day of Damian Lillard. Just catch and shoot with tons of time on the clock from about 34 feet. He looked like he was shooting a free throw, Tommy, and nothing but net. Bertans does the same thing. I've watched him a lot. Effortless shot from way out. And Henry, we've calculated that in our gym, if you can make about 80% of your shots consistently unguarded, you're going to be a 40% shooter. It isn't the case if you're 70%, you become 35%. We've not found that. But we found that once you hit the 80% number, you're going to make about 40% during the season. We haven't missed yet. Every one of our guys that's done that has been 40%, 39.3 on occasion. Sometimes guys are hurt a little bit. For 3 weeks, it lowers their percentage, and they get hot. But yeah, that you're making by 8 of 10, and then you're good to go for the NBA. And I agree with Tommy too. I think that we all think this, right? The range of the shot means if you get 3 or 4 guys that can shoot with that kind of range, you can't guard all of them and protect the rim. You just can't. So the shots are going to be there. It's different if you only have a couple guys. They can't take all the shots and get to 50 because you can guard those guys. But if there's 4 spread out over the court, someone's always going to be open. Otherwise, it's going to be a dunk fest. And you won't give up 53s, but you're going to give up 25 dunks. You'll always lose those games. Yep. You'll never win a game where you give up 25 dunks in a game. So you have to make that choice. And that's where the game's coming now. I agree.
So this is a fun problem, though. Okay, you're both very accustomed to thinking about winning the game, and it's a problem to figure out how to defend a team that's shooting from 34 feet all the time. But just for a second, putting on my fan hat, like TV ratings are down a little bit. We don't know about the revenues moving forward. This game you're describing, this is like Mike D'Antoni's dream on steroids, right? Like this is a very watchable game where there are people shooting from all over and 25 dunks.
You know, it's funny. I was with Mike in Denver, his first head coaching job in the NBA, and everything he's doing today was what he wanted to do then. It was just so, it was almost like heresy. Every great idea starts out as heresy, and certainly the NBA wasn't ready for it at that time. But we actually had some pretty decent personnel. Rafe LaFrance was the original stretch 5, and Van Exel would shoot only when he had the ball, and then we had some other guys. We had some other guys that could do it. Well, Nick could do that because he could put it in. He was one of the best players I'd ever been around. But it just the personnel didn't match kind of the way other teams were playing at that time. And quite honestly, it was a different media. The game was covered by different people back then too. That they really wanted to stay. They felt the game was only honored if it was played in the 80s or 90s, and those scores sometimes quite honestly, I've been on some teams that didn't defend at all. 80 or 90 was pretty good half, if that's all we gave up. But I think it's so much funner to watch those games. The roars that you used to hear for dunks now when guys hit those deep threes, it seems a little louder to me. It's just fun to watch. I think players love it too. If you can shoot, it's fun to be in that kind of offense.
Well, somewhere Mike had that line about like, we were just trying to get layups, right? Like it also just, it does create all kinds of excitement at the rim too.
Absolutely. And if you space the floor out and you have the right kind of personnel, you realize you can get away with playing a lot of guys that are a little undersized, and you get the most out of it. A lot of times the best rebounder on the floor isn't the tallest guy on the floor. In those situations, if they can read the rim, they see how the rebounds are coming off. You end up with a lot of great offensive rebounds, a lot of second opportunities, third opportunities. You can rack it up quick, and I think Scotty had a great this year offensively. We were far ahead of where we'd hoped to be. The defensive end, I think a lot of it had to just do with the inconsistency because of injuries and different guys in and out, and we're very young. But the truth is, we've got to get better at that end, or it doesn't matter what you're putting up on the board. We've got to improve defensively. That's our number one thing coming out of this hiatus. Definitely our number one task for the summer. And we don't know that it's necessarily personnel driven as much as, hey, let's get everybody in a great routine. Let's get our consistent rotations and see how that goes. Because even after All-Star break, we made some trades and stuff. We jumped up to the middle of the pack defensively. And that's not something we put on T-shirts or a marketing slogan, but going from the worst to the middle of the pack is a pretty good progression, and that's where we want to be. We don't want to be last in anything.
Yeah, we don't celebrate enough like the end of bad things. We always celebrate like right, but like it's a big deal.
Yeah, we may have a cake if we can get out of the bottom of the defensive end. But I'm always optimistic that the next wave of rotations that we have out on the floor, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
When
We have
he
some
was
more
with
good questions here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask real quick on Scotty. When he was at OKC, the year that Beverly knocked Westbrook out, they were a 1 seed, 160 games. Thought they just traded hard in that previous preseason. I watched a lot of their press conferences after the game because Kevin Martin was playing on that team. So it's like my kid. I'm gonna watch to hear what the coach has to say. Scotty, he always focused on defense every press conference. And I really and that team ended up being, I think, top 3 in the league defensively. And I felt like, so he knows how to coach defense. He got them to buy into it because it's all he talked about, which is no surprise because they could score in their sleep anyway with Durant and Westbrook and Kevin and Ibaka and those guys. Cephalosha was there. He got them to think about defense. That's the first step. So clearly Scotty's doing that now for you guys to make that leap, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to start getting guys to think, because they always want to think about offense. It takes time to get them to think about defense and taking pride in playing defense every possession.
Well, we timed it, and somehow going from the defensive end to the offensive end, guys are about 4 seconds faster sprinting. So we're trying to figure out if the floor, it must be uphill going the other way or something. We're going to figure it out. I think repetition is the key, and I do think sometimes you can outsmart yourself and you say, well, we have these 10 different coverages we're going to run. Instead of trying to be good at 10 different things, let's be great at 2 and build from that. Because I think there's guess what? The other team's pretty good. And some nights they just make shots. But it's so much harder to make a shot if you can close out to a shooter, if you can put pressure on the ball, if you can contain the dribbler. That's where we really struggled early in the year, was just containing penetration. And once that breaks down, then the whole floor becomes it's like, shooting fish in a barrel. And once we kind of figured that piece out, we did a better job defending on the perimeter. Well, then everything else kind of comes together. Like your bigs are shell shocked if they're getting constant attack the whole game and people right at the rim and they got to come over and over rotate, or too much help from one side and then somebody else is dunking and guys get in foul trouble. It kind of starts a death spiral. Everybody's confidence goes down. If we can get everybody just to do their job and do it well, and then I think you'll see the dramatic improvement. That's our goal. But to reach a goal, you got to have a system, and we're working on that.
So you just described this like how getting the ball into the paint freaks everybody out on defense. So a premium on those skills, but we're in the exact same moment of history where you want everyone to be able to shoot, right?
Yep.
Like it's not always the same guy. So how do you prioritize those two things?
That's why we have head coaches, Henry. I'll put him on. He can answer that for you. But I think for us, with a dynamic ball handler like John Wall, with Ish Smith behind him, we put a premium on fast. Get up and down the floor, put pressure on the rim, put pressure on the defense, get the ball out of the rim and go. And then usually that's your best shot of the shot clock, is getting the ball right down the floor and getting in a fast break. Secondary offense. But I think it's going to vary depending on who. Certainly, I'm not even trying to project how the game's going to look coming out of this hiatus, but certainly in the future, I think there's always going to be someone that can collapse the defense is going to have a high value. And John, fortunately for us, one great byproduct of this injury has been he's improved his shot dramatically. So he'll be a perimeter threat much more than he was before. He's got great floaters, and he gets to the rim anytime. And all that's going to do is open it wide open for Bradley. And in the meantime, Bradley's become one of the better playmakers in the NBA. He's definitely somebody that we look at, can initiate the offense at any time. He's great, always makes the right plays, passes up game-winning shots so his teammate can have a game-winning shot because it's the right play. Absolutely all about the team. So there's always something good to come out of an injury for us. Seeing John being able to watch the game change and Bradley being able to have his usage go way, way up, I think that's going to really be beneficial for us when they get back together.
That brings us to Devin's question. Devin says that he's quoting John, who was on a podcast, saying that he's going to be better than he was before. What can you tell us about that?
Hey, I hope he's right, because he was pretty darn good before. He was a 5-time All-Star. But one thing John never lacks is confidence or motivation. He really it's been fascinating watching The Last Dance and seeing – I witnessed it firsthand, the way Michael would motivate himself, and John does that too. He does not want to be discounted. An injury will marginalize an NBA player like nothing else. It's like you didn't exist, and people forget about you, and then you come back, and you're trying to get back as the player that you were, the level you were before, and everybody wants to compare you to the one of old. Well, John kind of went into a bit of a time capsule. Nobody's seen what we've seen. Before this hiatus, John was scrimmaging with the Go-Go. He was practicing with the Wizards, and we really feel strongly he's right back where he needs to be. He just needed to get the basketball shape going. And if you're not in basketball shape, you can really endanger your health. And that's something we were absolutely emphatic about. We're not going to put him in a position to hurt himself this year, but we feel great about where he's going to be in the future. But it's difficult. You look at some of the players. Paul George went through this after his injury with USA Basketball. Would he ever be the same? Well, he's put up MVP numbers since then. It's just when you get the opportunity to come back, that's the only time people are going to pay attention, is what the result of what you do. But John feels great right now, and it's good to hear him say those kinds of things. It definitely, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes.
David has David's been talking about John Wall ever since I've known him, basically. And one of his big points about John is he's just bigger than you think, which is not going away, right? That part of his game is going to be there.
Absolutely. I teased this year we started out with Isaiah Thomas, we had Ish Smith, we had Shabazz Napier. There's something to be said about tiny guys. They get out there and they can get into creases and they're small, but they sure bounce off people pretty quick. And John is he's a battering ram. People bounce off of him. So it's a good balance to have John and Ish and hopefully Shabazz back, where you can have different size guards and play them all together. But John is a tank. He's 210 solid, really got strong and still quicker than a paycheck. He can get up and down the floor as fast as anybody in the league with the ball. So it's a lethal combination. We're excited to see him come back.
But what would you say? You said he doesn't lack confidence. Can you tell us what you think he was lacking prior to his injury? Because there was a time, I don't remember if it was against Toronto. They won a playoff series. I did playoff MVP rankings because of Henry, and he was number 1 after that round 1. He was the best player in the league for that round, but he's not been able to maintain that. And he went number 1 for a reason overall. He's a 5-time All-Star, like you say. So what do you think has been lacking prior to that injury that kept him from getting to the first team All-NBA point guard status?
I think, honestly, and it's not an excuse, a great deal of it just had to be he's tougher than most, and he'll play with injury. But what happens is the more you play with injury, the more your body works against yourself. So it got to a point where, John wasn't able to bend his knee. He had bone spurs in his heel, so he wasn't able to extend a lot of times. Things that would limit his mobility out there, but he still wants to play. And we watched him play in the Atlanta series with he had 5 broken bones in his hand. His hand looked like Professor Clump. It was so huge, and he went out and played. It only missed 1 game in that series. Where they're phenomenal feats. But I look back on it, I blame ourselves. We should have taken him out of play a couple times and let him heal up better. But he's just somebody. If he has a heartbeat, he wants to play. He just does not. He doesn't suffer injuries very well. He wants to be out on the floor at all times, and it's a great thing. But now watching it, I consider John a very close friend, but he's a business partner. And I look at it and say, wisdom would say, I'd rather you miss tonight's game, tomorrow's game, than miss 10 games, or have a devastating injury a couple years down the road because of a culmination of all these nights that you're playing hurt. So we got to do a better job managing his minutes. I also do think, Coach, he's so able to get to the rim that defenses would just absolutely give him any shot on the perimeter and take their chances. And that messes with a player's confidence. If you see defenses going under, leaving you wide open, it does mess with you. And I think we've seen that other players in the league. And now John has no problem whatsoever. I can show you scrimmage video. He will pull from anywhere. He shoots a lot with Davis, with Davis, and with Bradley, and his confidence has gone way up shooting the ball. It's just repetition, being able to do those things. And so many players, I think they put in the time in the gym, but they're still afraid to implement it in a game. And the coach has to install that confidence. We have to demand these guys take those shots, because otherwise they're never going to be able to uncork it. We'll never see the new version. I don't think we're going to have that problem with John.
Why are you talking about Ben Simmons?
Just
kidding. I know you can't talk about Ben Simmons.
We had this conversation about Ben Simmons that he makes all these threes in practice, from what we're told, and what you said is what's happening there. He's not taking them in games.
Well, there's so many players in the league like that, and again, I think it comes back to personnel-wise. If that's what's best for the team, that you don't shoot from the perimeter, great, but the ball's always going to find you with about 4 seconds on the shot clock. In that case, the defensive coaches in the NBA are pretty amazing, and they'll find the person that doesn't feel comfortable shooting from the perimeter. They'll have the ball in their hands. So you got to get guys that are getting more comfortable with that shot.
It is.
We got a question from.
True.
Okay.
Go ahead, Henry. Go ahead.
No. Sorry. We're having this little lag, which makes it so I interrupt David every time he talks. I'm sorry about that. Really fast. A question from David.
You guys are like married couple.
We are. Although we've been together longer. So is it possible to get too close to a player personally? Being in the front office member, could you obstruct your professional objectivity?
Somebody told me a million years ago, it's okay to love a player, just don't be in love with a player. I don't think you got to have relationship equity with everybody, but there has to be a professional distance, because this is a business. And it's so difficult. The hardest things for me in this business are trades, because you're not just trading that player, you're trading their parents who you've met, you're trading their family, their kids who've been on your practice court, you're trading their best friends that always come see them, all those memories. You're sending a whole bunch of people down the road. And it's what's best for the organization. You must do it. But I don't think you can ever be too close to your guys in terms of building that relationship, that trust, and the ability to communicate. I'm brutally transparent with our players, and I think over the years that served me much better. I think if you can only accuse me of telling you the truth, then I did my job. But I do believe with relationships, this is a relationship business, and you're going to see a much more conducive environment if players can be comfortable and feel like this is an opportunity for me to show every night that I can get better, and that they have that feedback back and forth. But it is, I think in this business, you do get uncomfortably close sometimes, and it could cloud your judgment. Looking back over the years, there's players that you say, shoot, that might have been better for the organization if we had traded them a year or two before. But they probably say the same thing of us, like, shoot, I wish they'd have run you a couple years ago, so it works both ways. I think at the end of the day, it is a business, but we don't have to treat it to everybody. These aren't assets. These are people, and people are your very best resource. And to continue to grow relationships, I encourage everybody in our franchise to have great relationships with our players, because I just think that helps, not just when they walk through the door and they become a Wizard, but the rest of their life. We want them to have that kind of bear hug the rest of their life. And that's the way we roll here.
That's cool. David, before I cut you off there, you were going to ask a question.
No, I was just, when Tommy's talking about these kinds of things, it's been on your mind, Tommy, for a long time before you finally got this spot. These are conversations that we've had, and you've had with many others for a long time. It's been a year now. Have you taken a deep breath ever and just thought about the road you've taken? Because all these players have a similar story. They're as younger than you. Have you taken some time to think about that road and where it's brought you?
I do look back from time to time, and I think you're kind of the sum of all your experiences. And I've been really blessed to be around some great things, but I've been part of some tough years in basketball too. And sometimes you learn as much from how not to do something as how to do something. And I take from all that. And for me, in a year's time, it definitely has been gratifying to see a lot of the things that we always thought, hey, we should try this, let's try this, and we're trying them and they're working. I still think there's so much more room to grow. You always have to learn more and more. And I'm spending a lot more time learning from different people outside of basketball in terms of leadership. And one of the key quotes I got this year is when you're considered to be a leader, you surrendered your right to have a bad day. You can't have a bad day. We've got to do a much better job. And I empower all of our coaches the same way. We've got to set the tempo. When a player walks in the building, it's just the perfect temperature for basketball and getting better. Don't bring your problems to work. And definitely if the players are walking in the door with some issues, some baggage or something, let's get it off so they can be productive today and go home in a much better frame of mind. And I think being able to read the room, those are things, Coach, that you just constantly got to get better at. But in a year's time, it does make the previous 26 seem like they just is a blink of an eye. But I also said, I told this to somebody, I said, some days they pass like a paycheck, and some days it pass like a kidney stone. It goes, depends. The losses are so difficult.
Yeah, no doubt.
Don't you everybody listening to this right now, I think just like, I want to work for Tommy Sheppard. Like, of course you want to walk in the gym when
I don't know
the
about
temperature's
that.
good for basketball.
I can't have that because Tommy, I'm sending my son to you. Max wants to do what you do one day, and he'll start college in the fall. And I don't know how else he'll be able to travel because he'll play, but I want him to intern with you. And hell, he can feed the ducks. He can walk your dogs. He loves animals.
We'll bring them on, no problem at all. The funnest thing for me is really when you can kind of get everybody in a room and realize that everybody feels like they're contributing. And I think that's one of the inhibiting factors every organization faces is how much can you empower people to do their job and give the freedom to do stuff. And all those old cliches about, hey, don't get people you got to motivate, get people that you just make sure you don't demotivate. I know that sounds cliche, but I think we've got a good balance. You've always got to do better, and we've got to improve on our philosophies. You can't stay stagnant, but I'm really proud to put a group together that I think is presenting well to the investment Mr. Leonsis has made has been incredible, and his patience has been enormous. We just want to this guy's used to winning championships. He's got a Stanley Cup, WNBA championship, won an arena football championship. That's the standard. And so everyone's looking at us, and I welcome that challenge. We want to add to the trophy case, certainly, but we learned in the past, there's no shortcuts. You got to grow it up and do it the right way, and that's what we're aiming to do.
We're in overtime. We have a little tradition. The last question comes from exceptional True Hoop contributor Gerard Hector, who usually joins us by video. And I think he's going to magically appear. There he is.
Thanks, Henry. Hey, Tommy, how are you? I'm in Paris. Yes.
Those people behind you need to tell them to spread out. They're not social distancing.
They don't listen. And my French is pretty decent, so I don't know.
Hey, that looks like our house. That looks like our house when the bathroom opens. Everybody's running to try to get in. We got a crowded house.
Actually, two quick questions. So your first one's really fast. My girlfriend will get mad if I don't ask you this question. What kind of ducks do you have?
So we have Peking ducks. We have khaki Campbells and one that and Muscovies.
Very good. I will note that down to tell her. Okay, now back to basketball. Obviously, analytics are so important when you're looking at how you're evaluating a player. Right? That's one of the pieces I'm sure that you look at. But as you know, constructing a team, talent, of course, can't win without that. How do you make the calculus between, all right, this guy analytically will fit, but he might be a little bit off maybe culturally, or maybe he's like unknown culturally, but this other guy a little less favorable analytically, but will fit in right for the culture? Like, how are you making those? How's that calculus work?
Well, for us, we're blessed. We have one of the premier people in the analytic world, in Joe Sill, who's been fantastic and leads our charge with Brett Greenberg. But we actually added an assistant coach this year, longtime friend of mine, Dean Oliver. And Dean's kind of the godfather of, the four factors, and basketball on paper is a lot of people's Bible. So that's pretty big firepower there. And they do. Joe will bring names to us that don't necessarily jump off the page from a basketball standpoint. And then you start studying it a little bit more and a little bit more. That's kind of how we end up with Garrison Matthews, for example. But the place that we like to try those guys out a lot more is in the G League. Because a lot of people strong analytic numbers, but they end up not getting drafted. Well, we're still going to be attracted to them and try to see if we can complement their game and bring more out of their game. But it's so important for us. We look at being data driven, very, very much as the forefront of that is our player selection. So we have to be really careful, like you said, the balance, eyes, ears, and numbers have to line up. But I tell you what, if the numbers don't line up, be very, very careful, because you can't wish a guy better. Once you take a player and you say we can make him a player, you better have some basis for that. If they have a history of bad numbers, just guess what, man? History tends to repeat itself. And the only good sequel I ever saw was Godfather 2. Like, there's not a great sequels. If they weren't very good in college, it's going to be harder for them to succeed in the NBA.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I apologize about the connection, but Tommy, you showed some real grit, the kind of stuff you're looking for in players. Like, you persevered, you hung in there. And we learned about your Ducks. So thank you so much. Gerard, David, Tommy, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Tomorrow, Sue Bird's here.
I tell you what, you
Awesome.
got some big time people coming. It's fantastic to catch up with you guys again. And I look forward to continuing that. Thanks for all your help over the years.
Yeah,
Be
thank
safe.
you. All right, we'll talk again.
Take care.